The Mystery of the Octagon, Aachen Cathedral. Charles the Great, King of the Franks, began the construction of his palace chapel in the late 8th century. He commissioned the construction of Aachen Cathedral, which features an octagonal dome 32 meters high. Pope Leo crowned Charlemagne as the Imperator Romanorum, Emperor of the Romans, in the year 800. The great dome above the altar is octagonal because Charlemagne placed special significance on the number 8. The numeral appears frequently in the Holy Bible. It was charged with symbolism in the Christian world during medieval times. An octagon can be made by drawing two intersecting squares within a circle.
Oh, you mean like this? Let's see. Rub el-Hizb. Arabic term, an Islamic symbol represented as two overlapping squares, which is found in a number of emblems and flags. Huh. Interesting. Oh, Rub el-Hizb. Oh, wow, this looks familiar. Where have I seen this before? Where have I seen that shape before? Floor plan of Charlemagne's Palace Cathedral? What? But this is Muslim.
Regardless, the Umayyads started construction on the Dome of the Rock and completed it sometime in the 690s, according to an inscription inside the building itself.
In the 690s, you say? What else was going on in the 690s? What is this? Carolingian dynasty, also known as the Carlovingians? Carlings was a Frankish noble family founded by Charles Martel. The dynasty consolidated its power in the 8th century. Founder Charles Martel, 688. That sounds awfully close to the 690s. Who was Charles Martel? Oh, Charlemagne is his grandson. Remember this. We're going to come back to this.
And although its octagonal shape is unique for Islamic architecture, this was not a unique shape for nearby Byzantine churches and shrines at the time. Octagonal churches could be found throughout the region. In fact, the archaeologist Rena Avner argues that the Dome of the Rock architects must have modeled it after the Church of the Kathisma only 3 miles away on the outskirts of Jerusalem. This octagonal church was active at the same time as the Dome of the Rock, and it also features a stone at its center, where it was believed that the Mother Mary had rested on her way to Bethlehem. You can still see this today. It's sitting on the side of a highway, and you can clearly see its original octagonal shape and the rock at its center. The interior space for both of these buildings was suited for walking around a stone. Scholars like to use the fancy term circumambulating, walking around a specific rock or pillar or some object, which was a common ritual practice in the late antique Mediterranean world. So it's likely that the Dome of the Rock was drawing on these cultural cues, purpose-built as a pilgrimage shrine, possibly to promote Muslim pilgrimage to Jerusalem.
Okay, again, here's Kathisma Church. Again, the features, the rock, our layout, and now let's compare this to the Dome of the Rock. This is the inside of the Dome of the Rock with the round structure inside, similar to this layer. And then we have what's called the foundation stone. The Jews call it. I forget what it's called in Arabic. And that's the stone in the middle. Here's some views of it. Here is some architectural layouts of the Dome of the Rock. So again, we have the round feature inside the dome, and then the octagonal on the outside. Okay, so again, just like Kathisma Church, we have octagonal, 3 layers, 1, 2, 3, and the seat. Okay, again, we believe this is like the bema or judgment seat that Herod would have had. Okay, and so that the early Christians would have built a site to commemorate this. So here's some other architectural layout of this to kind of show us. We don't, of course, have the actual building of the Kathisma Church, but here's an overall of the Dome of the Rock.
Aachen Cathedral, an imposing silhouette against the sky. It is a bold and breathtaking image, an image which speaks to us of mystery. Discovered the cathedral's fascinating history, a history dominated by the great Emperor Charlemagne. He made Aachen the seat of his Holy Roman Empire. And in 804 AD, Charlemagne built a chapel here. It was as spectacular as any Europe had ever known. Today, this chapel forms the heart of a much larger cathedral. In fact, some of the architectural elements we see here, such as the Gothic choir, were actually added on after Charlemagne. But it is the original chapel which is most intriguing, particularly its height and shape. Indeed, the very size of the chapel has inspired generations. Rising 103 feet high, it was for a long time the largest vaulted building north of the Alps. Another intriguing element of the chapel is its curious octagonal shape, which may have a religious origin. Some think the Aachen architects based the chapel's design on a sort of holy numerology. Historian Maximilian Kerner believes so.
During the Middle Ages, people had symbols in all the different kinds of numbers, and so they are showing here a form of the numbers, but that has to do with religion.
In Islamic culture, geometry is everywhere. You can find it in mosques, madrasas, palaces, and private homes. This tradition began in the 8th century CE.
The palace chapel is constructed of 2 rings of columns. The interior ring forms an octagon. The exterior ring is 16-sided.
When you see the octagon first and afterwards 16-sided gallery around, that also is a combination of the number 4.
While not all agree as to the religious meaning of the number 4, one thing is certain. The number itself appears to have significance in the architecture of Aachen Cathedral.
The Dome of the Rock.
The circle represents God's eternity, while the square represents the secular world. The 4 corners also represent the 4 directions to heaven and the 4 characteristics of man. Charlemagne saw the number 8 as symbolizing the power of the Franks and the Roman Empire, the ruler of both the secular and religious worlds. The 2 relics in his hands were symbols of his power as ruler of the 2 worlds. Charlemagne is holding a scepter symbolizing his rule of the secular world in his right hand, while in his left he holds an orb, the symbol of the religious world.
Now, we are always told that Charlemagne was the defender of Europe against Muslims. In fact, Charlemagne's campaigns against the Muslims are often considered one of the earliest, or if not the earliest, crusade, although it is not called the First Crusade. That has a different delineation for another event in history, but Charlemagne's campaigns in Iberia are often referred to as the real First Crusade. So surely if he was the ruler of Christendom and he saw himself as the ruler of the secular and religious world, surely when they tell us that Charlemagne fought the Muslims, this must have been on religious grounds, right? Religious grounds. The defender of Christendom, Charlemagne. What's this? Abbasid Carolingian alliance from the 8th to the 9th century. Combined military operations between the Frankish Carolingian Empire and the Abbasid Caliphate. The Abbasid Caliphate was the third of the Islamic caliphates to succeed the Islamic prophet Muhammad. What? I thought Charlemagne was a religious leader who fought Muslims. But this alliance says that they actually had combined military operations together. Oh, here's a painting commemorating Harun al-Rashid. Now, some people might look at this and assume that this is one of Charlemagne's warriors engaging in warfare. But this description says that it is Harun al-Rashid receiving a delegation of Charlemagne in Baghdad. That's not in Iberia. That's not in Spain. That's in the Middle East. Charlemagne sent delegations to Baghdad. Wait a second. He's not attacking. They're actually giving gifts here. Look at this. Here, this guy looks very Muslim. I wonder if we can make this bigger. He doesn't look white or European to me. He looks like he's a Muslim fellow receiving gifts from Charlemagne with Christian emissaries. Not exactly sure what's going on here in the rest of the scene, but they are giving gifts, and the Christians and the Muslims here are coordinating together. That's very interesting. Now, if you attempt to do a Google search for this Abbasid Carolingian alliance, it's very odd that the internet seems to have been scrubbed. There's hardly anything that comes up under this Abbasid Carolingian alliance. In fact, I half expect Wikipedia to mysteriously change. You wouldn't think that Wikipedia would be paying such close attention to someone with as small as a following as me, but I swear to you, I have seen it change after certain things are pointed out. I have seen entire pages just disappear, entire Wikipedia articles whittled away that were once quite long and instructive into just a tiny little thumbnail. And others who have started doing their own investigation independently have reported to me that they're witnessing the same things. So what I could find on the internet, let's see here. I did find this on a academic website, Munster, University of Munster, and a book, Wolfram Drews. Now this image is super blurry. There we go. Die Karolinger und die Abbasiden von Baghdad, which I'm gonna have to get reading ability in German because I'm locked out. I can't. But anyway, I did look for other books in English and I could not find anything. I could not even find this one on Amazon. I made a screenshot of this here with some points underlined. Wolfram Drews provides an analysis of the historical and political circumstances of two political rule changes in the middle of the 8th century. Now remember, we talked about the origins of the Carolingian dynasty. And we looked at in the beginning of this video, we looked at the Dome of the Rock going up in the 690s, and we looked at Charles Martel forming the Carolingian dynasty essentially in 688 or so. But according to this says, I believe that Charles Martel, or the origins of the Carolingian dynasty, the very first one who had the political power was not officially crowned king. So I believe he's talking about when they officially took over. And this here, according to this professor and a university website, says that in the middle of the 8th century, the ruling dynasties of the Frankish kingdom and the Islamic Caliphate were both overthrown by coups. Merovingians and Umayyads were replaced by their Carolingian and Abbasid successors. This simultaneous occurrence was a mere coincidence. Coincidence? Coups? Overthrown? Replaced? Simultaneously? I can't read German at this point in time, but I would encourage any German speakers to start doing their own research, see what you can find. This does look to be a legitimate researcher and a legitimate scholar. Now, I could not get my hands on that book, but I do subscribe to an academic database, and it's very interesting because this database catalogs books digitally that do not come up in Google searches or on Amazon. And this continues to happen when I'm looking for books that go along with this this thread that I'm researching. Continuously, these books do not come up in a Google search, but they do come up in this database. Once I have the title and the author's name, I can then go and find it. So I have ordered this book, Muhammad and Charlemagne, which was published after the author's death. The author died in 1935, and it was published in 1939. So I have ordered it. You can find it on Amazon or Book Finder. Let's see. When you pull it up on Amazon, whoops. When you pull it up on Amazon, oh, here we go. When you pull it up on Amazon, this posthumous work of renowned scholar Henry Pirenne offered a new and decisive explanation of the evolution of Europe from the time of Constantine to that of Charlemagne. His revolutionary ideas overthrew many of the most cherished conceptions concerning the Middle Ages, namely that the Germanic invasions destroyed neither the Mediterranean unity of the ancient world nor the essential features of Roman culture, and that the cause of the break with the tradition of antiquity was the advance of Islam. Well, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. I've ordered that book. We'll see what happens when it comes in. But surely Charlemagne was such a good Christian, and he was invading Spain for religious purposes. Oh, here's an article. The Muslim who persuaded Charlemagne to invade Spain. Charlemagne's 778 invasion of Spain, commemorated inaccurately in the Song of Roland, is often portrayed as a type of crusade. In fact, it was a Muslim who convinced the Frankish king to cross the Pyrenees. And we already know that Charlemagne and the Caliphate in Baghdad had an alliance. Why would a Muslim ask for the assistance of a devout Christian? Interesting. Why would a Christian ally with the head of the Muslim world? I don't know. Muhammad the Prophet Muhammad. When was he active? Oh, born circa 570, died 632. This is sort of right in the vicinity here of the rise of the Carolingians. But who was the first Frankish king to convert to Catholicism? Clovis, died in 511, was the first king of the Franks to unite all of the Frankish tribes under one ruler, changing the form of leadership from a group of royal chieftains to rule by a single king, ensuring that the kingship was passed down to his heirs. Now this is divine right of kings, that is an overturning of the old Indo-European caste system. Considered the founder of the Merovingians, which ruled the Frankish kingdoms for the next 2 centuries. He is also the first Frankish king to convert. Clovis is also significant due to his conversion to Catholicism in 496. So Clovis converts to Catholicism at the very end of the 5th century, overturns the Indo-European caste system. Right after that, Muhammad comes around. We know that his religious experience was also militaristic and based in conquest and empire building. And then we have already seen that mysteriously, the Merovingians, which is Clovis's dynasty, the Merovingians were overturned by the Carolingians, Charlemagne's dynasty, at the exact same time that the Abbasid dynasty in the Middle East. So there's a lot of things going on in these centuries. But you know what else is interesting about this period of history? Is that it is known as an especially dark age. What are dark ages in terms of historiography? We're not talking about... Technically, the early Middle Ages, also sometimes called the Dark Ages. This is actually Dark Ages, is a historical periodization, traditionally referring to the Middle Ages, but why? Because in terms of historiography, we're talking about lack of records. Lack of records is what makes a dark age. Compared with earlier and later periods of light, meaning abundance of records. Okay. Let's see. Oh, we're back to the 7th, 8th, and 9th centuries. Now that's odd because we always hear that the Christians brought writing, the Christians brought monasteries, which preserved cultural history. Why do all the records go missing in the 7th, 8th, and 9th centuries all the way through here? Let's see. Here's a chart. Output of European manuscripts. 5th. Now remember, Clovis, we just saw that Clovis was converted. When? In the 5th century. That's odd. I thought Christianity brought lightness to Europe and recording of records. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. But then we get to the 12th century, boom, suddenly we have the ability to write and record records, 13th, 14th, 15th. Why do all the records... Now look at the dearth of records compared to what we see later. And as we just read, that this also means that prior to this, there's an abundance of records. Why do the records suddenly go missing 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th century? Something's going on here. What else do we have going on right at this exact time when all the records go missing, when Clovis, the Frankish Merovingian king, converts to Christianity and Muhammad comes around? The Visigothic kingdom, from the 5th to the 8th centuries. Odd. Those are the exact centuries with the lowest amount of records. Visigoths, a tribe of Germanic people. Where did the Visigothic kingdom exist? Oh, I see. Iberia, southern France, Iberia. I wonder what happened to the Visigoths and why. Let's see where the Franks turn up. Oh, losing a lot of their territory to the Franks in the early 6th century, right after the Franks were converted to Christianity. The Visigoths now came into conflict with the Franks under their king Clovis, who had conquered northern Gaul. So Clovis converts to Catholicism and immediately starts attacking the Visigoths. Following a brief war with the Franks, Alaric was forced to put down a rebellion. Blah, 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 probably due to pressure from the Franks. In 507, the Franks attacked again. Gee, it sounds like the Franks are really hammering these Visigoths. One wonders if the constant hammering of these Visigoths in Iberia might have weakened them, so that they might not have been able to withstand Muslim invasion. The Visigoths had lost most of their Gallic holdings except for Septimania. I've never heard of Septimania before, have you? Where else do the Franks turn up? Okay, so it looks like they were seeking to establish amicable terms with the Franks through royal marriages. So the Visigoths were like, listen, please, if we intermarry, will you please stop attacking us? But I guess it didn't work, because they had one of their last leaders deposed by the Franks. They're still warring with the Franks at the end of the 6th century. But Christians and Muslims have been enemies since the beginning, right? I mean, it's just a coincidence that Muhammad is active at this period in history, that all of this weird religious and empire expanding stuff is going on. Muhammad engaging in campaigns. Clovis embraces Catholicism and immediately starts hammering all of his neighbors, all of his Germanic neighbors, even though he's supposedly a Germanic Frank himself. Some of these neighbors were actually Christian, like the Visigoths, but they were not Catholic Christian. So I guess that made it okay to assault them and hammer them. But why would the Carolingian dynasty, because remember, of course, originally it was the Merovingians, but then there's this weird thing where, according to this scholar, remember this, that a near simultaneous mere coincidence occurs where the Frankish kingdom and the Islamic Caliphate were both overthrown by coups in the 8th century. So the Merovingians and the Umayyads were replaced by their Carolingian and Abbasid successors. Could these two parts of the world be working in conjunction with one another? Could that be what's going on? Muhammad wrote letters to heads of state. Apparently, there is a tradition. So Muhammad, in the 7th century, was writing letters to the Byzantine emperor, the king of Ethiopia, governor of Bahrain, the Makwakiks of Egypt. So I guess it's not unfeasible that he might have engaged in some sort of communication with Western leaders if he was reaching out to all these different leaders. But I wonder what else. What's this? What is this? The Ashtiname of Muhammad? The Covenant or Testament of Muhammad is a document which is a charter ratified by the Islamic prophet Muhammad, granting protection and other privileges to the followers of Jesus the Nazarene, given to the Christian monks of St. Catherine's Monastery. It was even sealed with an imprint representing Muhammad's hand. So what we have here around this period of time, we have Middle Eastern Christian churches being modeled exactly like ancient Temple of Herod, repeated in the Dome of the Rock, and then repeated in Charlemagne's cathedral, built about 3 centuries or so after the church, that Christian church we looked at, goes missing. We have the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th centuries are mysteriously dark ages where all the records go missing. We have the foundation of Islam. We have the first Frankish king to adopt Catholicism. They both immediately become militant. And apparently Muhammad had sworn protection for the followers of Jesus and sent out letters to different heads of state. Could it be possible that these two areas of the world were working in conjunction with one another? But why would Christianity and Islam really ramp up at the same time? And even though Muhammad wrote letters to heads of state, and even though Muhammad ratified a document granting protection to Christians, and even though it's clear that Charlemagne had an alliance with the caliphate in Baghdad, and even though it's very clear that the Christian Franks would happily attack their Germanic neighbors, even when they were Christian, the Visigoths were Christian, but they were not Catholic Christian. They were Arian Christian. So it's odd to me that if Charlemagne is such a religious leader, such a religious figure, that he would ally with a Muslim in Baghdad against his Germanic Christian neighbors, even though they're a different kind of Christianity. I guess Christianity wasn't really that unifying unless you were the exact right form of Christianity. Otherwise, you were still going to get attacked by your neighbors. But I wonder what else was going on at this time in this period of history that might give us some clues as to why Islam and Christianity might be connected and coordinated. What's this? Radhanites? What are the Radhanites? Oh, this is a map of Eurasia showing the trade network of Radhanites circa 870, 9th century. Huh, interesting. Boy, they sure look awfully networked between East and West here, between Europe, Africa, and Asia. Who are these Radhanites? Well, they have a version of their name in Arabic and in Hebrew. They were medieval merchants, some of Jewish origin. Only a limited number of primary sources use the term. Wait a second, only a limited number of primary sources? A limited number of primary sources? They were active approximately 500, the year 500 to the year 1000, and there's only a limited number of primary sources that use the term. I wonder why there's only a limited number of primary sources. Oh, European output of manuscripts. That's weird. Starting in the year 500. All the records go missing. So you've got the 6th century, the 7th century. Where are all the records? Why do all the records go missing? Why is it that it's not until the 12th century that we start to produce records again? What's happening here? I wonder if that's just another coincidence. a trans-Eurasian trade network. So because there's no records, because there's only a limited number of primary sources, it remains very unclear whether this referred to a specific guild or to a clan, or generically to Jewish merchants in the trans-Eurasian trade network, operating in trade between, dun dun dun, the Christian and Islamic worlds, approximately 500 to 1000. Well, when did we say that Clovis, the Merovingian Frankish king, converted? Wasn't that about the year 498? Didn't Muhammad appear on the scene about 100 years after that, sending letters to heads of state declaring protection for Christians? And did we not just look at a Christian church that was dated to approximately the year 500 or so, built on the same pattern as the ancient temple of Herod, which is then repeated in the Dome of the Rock, a Muslim mosque, which is then repeated in Charlemagne's cathedral, the chapel inside the cathedral, all going up during this period? That's very interesting. Also during that period, also during that same period, so the Merovingian king converted, but he must not have been towing the line for some reason. He must not have been doing a good job, because there was a coup in the middle of the 8th century, and the Merovingians in Europe and the Umayyads in the Middle East were replaced by who? The Carolingians and the Abbasid successors, near simultaneously, but it was a mere coincidence. It's an awful lot of coincidences going on here.
A sacred place somewhere in the Saxon forests, a holy place of the old Germanic religion. For the pagan Saxons, Imunsul is the column that connects heaven and earth, the gods with humankind. It's the place where the Saxon priests communicate with Wotan, Dona and Saxnot. The priests know the ancient spells that can heal people and animals. And if the gods wish it, the healing is a success. This old Germanic world is threatened on a summer's day in 772. From this day on, nothing will be the same again, and that includes the lives of the Saxon noble Widukind, meaning forest child, and his friend Anno.
Quiet. Those are horses' hooves.
A young Frankish king invades Saxony with a large cohort of mounted warriors.
Quick!
Franks, they're attacking the village.
Wait!
The children, the women.
Wait!
The attack takes the Saxons by complete surprise. They are defenseless. Is it just an ambush, a marauding expedition like many others? The Frankish king himself is leading his troops. The Franks are Christians. In their view, the Saxons are nothing but faithless worshippers of idols, barbarian heathens.
Round them up. Burn down the village.
Charles, the 24-year-old king of the Franks, is confident of his cause. He wants to increase the size of his realm and turn the pagans into Christians, with fire and swords if need be. On this day, the Frankish warriors bring death and destruction to many Saxon villages. It was a period full of rampaging conquests where the fighters believed they had a right to kill for their faith.
So right during this time period, all of this is going on. Muhammad appears. The Quran, written during the years 609 to 632 in the 7th century. 7th century? 7th and 8th century. Charlemagne's grandfather, Charles Martel. And we have eventually the overthrow of the Merovingians, which just so happens by mere coincidence has a near simultaneous occurrence over in the Middle East with the Abbasids. And what does Islam teach us? What does Islam teach us? The oneness of God. The oneness of God and the acceptance of Muhammad as God's prophet, at least in the Middle East.
The two relics in his hands were symbols of his power as ruler of the two worlds. Charlemagne is holding a scepter symbolizing his rule of the secular world in his right hand, while in his left he holds an orb, the symbol of the religious world.
Charles, the young Frankish king, sought to defeat and subjugate the Saxons. His father and grandfather before him had steadily expanded the Frankish Empire through conquest. But here, at the sacred location of Irminsul, much more was at stake. Charles wanted to stamp out the competing culture. He wanted there to be just one faith wherever he ruled, his faith.
God is on the side of the Franks. There to see it with their own eyes. Tear down the idol.
What happens to a people whose religious feelings are violated in such a way? These blows caused turmoil all across the Saxon territory, with villages on the Weser and the Elbe between Thuringia and the North Sea going up in flames.
Are Christianity and Islam the same religion with the same origins, created by the same people to bring about the same aims? This is a very serious question that more people need to start asking themselves, because we face the destruction of our culture yet again today, simply with new incarnations of ideology that are still pitted against one another exactly in the same way. If we want to survive, we need to take our head out of our rear end, break the mind control and the conditioning, and look critically at what is going on. Beautiful European architecture or Victory Mosque? You decide. The cultures built by Europeans are beautiful. They are beautiful because we are Europeans and they reflect our soul. They have nothing to do with ideology, they have everything to do with ethnicity. In many ways, Europeans remained true to their ethnic faith despite the Christian conquest of our lands. It is time to look deeply into our heart and our soul. Think carefully and choose our own blood and the soil that birthed our race. It is time to remember who we are and embrace our true identity once again. We have an ethnic spirituality, and if all people of all colors in all the wide world embraced their own ethnic spirituality, this would be the antidote to globalism. Abrahamic faiths, Christianity and Islam, now cover 85% of the planet. No matter who you are, no matter what your race is, look to your own ancestors and your indigenous culture. This is the way all people will survive the globalist onslaught. My name is Carolyn Emerick, and I have been slandered and harassed by the mainstream left for daring to care about my ethnic heritage and speaking up for my culture. But I have also been slandered, harassed, and bullied by the alt-right because I will not be silent on Chrislam. I love my culture, and I will speak out for its survival. Please learn more about European ethnic heritage at carolynemerick.com. Please learn about a folkish worldview that is a worldview appropriate for all races and all cultures by going to folkright.com and downloading the free PDF. And please begin to learn about ethnic faith by visiting folkfaith.org, where we will have another free PDF available for your reading pleasure very soon.